Jeff bought a package of 48 paper towels. The paper towels are wrapped in groups of 4. How many groups of paper towels are in the package? So this one, I know my total, right? And then I know how many are going in each group. What I don't know is how many groups I'm going to have. So this is going to be a division problem since I'm trying to work backwards to find either the number of groups or the number of objects per group. And so then I know this is not array, so for division, that means it has to either be the sharing partitioning or the equal grouping. And so this is based on, do I know how many go in each group, right? And in this case, I do, right? I know that there are going to be 4 in each group. So if I know how big to make my groups, then that means this is equal grouping. And I'll go ahead and do this setup. And again, how would I know for certain that it's equal grouping if the question mark is the first number, right? So when I go through this, I know my units are paper towels, and they actually just use the words groups, right? I guess technically we could use packages, but they did use groups, so I'm going to stick with that. So I know that my first number times my second number equals my total. I know that the second number in my multiplication is going to have to be either paper towels per group or groups per paper towel. Paper towels per group makes sense. So then that means this would have to be the number of groups, and this would have to be the total paper towels. So I know my total is 48, and I know the paper towels are wrapped in groups of 4, right? That doesn't mean 4 groups, that means 4 paper towels per group. And so I'm missing that first number. And again, that would cement this for me. If I'm missing the number of groups, right, that tells me it's equal grouping. If I know how many are in each group, that's equal grouping. So looking at number 6, Devin has 11 cups of flour. His recipe for brownies calls for 2 cups of flour. Assuming he has enough of all the other ingredients, how many recipes of brownies can he make? So if I were actually going to solve this, I would have a remainder on this one. That's okay. I don't need to worry about that just yet. So this one, though, I am working backwards. I know the total. I'm trying to find a missing value. So this is going to be division. And as always, the way to figure this out, if you struggle with figuring out either the model or whether it's multiplication or division, is to go ahead and do the setup equation. So honestly, you could start with the setup equation every single time if you like. In this case, I've got cups of flour and I've got recipes of brownies, right? So recipes and cups seem to be my unit. So this is going to be the first number times the second number is going to be either cups per recipe or recipes per cup. I think cups per recipe makes sense. And I know what that is, right? It says each, or his recipe for brownies calls for 2 cups of flour. So I know it's 2 cups per recipe. And I also know that he has 11 total cups of flour. What I don't know is the number of recipes. So I could have always just started with that setup equation, and then as soon as I realized that I do know how many go in each group and that I don't know the first number, that would tell me that this is equal grouping. Looking at the next one, it says Penny has 15 stickers she wants to give to 4 of her friends. If each friend gets the same number of stickers, how many stickers does each friend get? Again, if I were to actually solve this, I would end up with a remainder. So if it's obvious that that would happen, that would help you figure out that this is in fact division. But again, we could just do our setup equation to find that. So I've got friends and I've got stickers. I think that the units then that make sense for this middle number would be stickers per friend. So then that means that this has to be the number of friends, and then the total has to be the number of stickers. So in this case, I know that she has 15 total stickers, and she wants to give this to 4 of her friends, right? So what I'm trying to find is how many stickers does each friend get, or what are the stickers per friend? So again, if I hadn't already written it down, I can look at, well, how do you find, if I'm trying to figure out 4 times what equals 15, how do you find that missing value? You would divide 15 by 4. So that would tell you that it's division. And then since I do not know how many go in each group, right? And my question mark is the second number, that would tell me that this is a sharing or partitioning. At number 8 here, Mike has 6 packs of Fruit Chewies. Zasha has twice as many packs of Fruit Chewies as Mike. How many packs of Fruit Chewies does Zasha have? So this one, we're talking about some starting value and then having, in this case, twice as many or 2 times as many. So we're talking about like 2 times as many, 3 times as many, something like that. That's going to be a multiplicative comparison problem. So it is possible, again, that you could actually have a division problem that uses multiplicative comparison. But we would consider it still to be a multiplication model. So multiplicative comparison. So for our setup, we would have the first number in a multiplicative comparison be the number of objects. And then the second number would be however many times more or however many times as many. And then that's going to equal the total. In this case, the objects are the packs, right? Packs of Fruit Chewies. I'm just going to say packs. So I would have a number of packs to start with, and then this would be times how many times as many, how many times more, and then that would give me the new total number of packs. So in this case, Mike has 6 packs of Fruit Chewies. That's my starting value. It says Zasha has twice as many packs, so 2 times as many. And then I'm trying to figure out how many packs of Fruit Chewies does Zasha have. So I'm trying to find the total packs for Zasha. So if you saw this with a division problem, it might just give you the total and then ask you, that one of the missing parts here. So it might say, Zasha has twice as many packs of Fruit Chewies as Mike, and she has 12. How many did Mike have? And so then you're working backwards, right? Or Mike had 6 packs and Zasha has 12 packs. How many times as many does Zasha have, right? So that would be what it would look like if you saw that with division. For number 9, a recipe for oatmeal requires 3 cups of uncooked oats. How many cups of oats are needed to make 2 recipes of oatmeal? So I'm seeing 2 units here. I'm seeing cups and I'm seeing recipes. So if I'm using like a standard way of writing a setup equation, I would do, objects times, groups times objects per group, right? In this case, cups per recipe makes sense. Which means that the first number would have to be the total number of recipes, and what it's equal to would have to be the total number of cups. So this is my standard if it's not, one of the other models, if it's not multiplicative comparison, or if it's not the list counting, then we typically write it this way where we have, groups times objects per group, right? In this case, recipes times cups per recipe. So this says a recipe for oatmeal requires 3 cups of uncooked oats. That's for 1 recipe. So that means I know the per part, 3 cups per recipe. And then it wants to know how many cups of oats are needed to make 2 recipes of oatmeal. So I know that the number of recipes is 2. And so I'm trying to find the total number of cups. So how would I solve this? I would multiply 2 times 3. So in this case, just writing that setup equation helps me clarify that this is actually multiplication, which means this is the groups of objects or repeated sums. model. Looking at number 10, Mr. Jones has 40 desks in his room. He has the desks arranged into rows. If each row contains 5 desks, how many rows of desks are in Mr. Jones' classroom? So it's talking about rows. That would tell me this is going to be, an array problem. Now, is it multiplication or division? If it's clear here that we know the total, right, that we have a total, then that means it's division, right? So if you notice that we have the total, but we're missing one of the pieces, that would tell you it's division. If you don't notice that, then you go ahead and you write your setup equation. So when we figure out that it's array, we know this is going to be a number of rows times a number of objects per row. In this case, those objects are desks. So desks per row. And then that would equal some total number of objects, in this case, total desks. So what do I know? I know the total is 40 desks. I also know each row contains 5 desks, so I know 5 desks per row. What I don't know is the number of rows. So as soon as I write that setup, if I wasn't clear before that this was division, I can see, oh, how would I find the number of rows? I would divide 40 by 5. So this is then array area. And then the last one here, there are 7 houses on my street. Each house has 3 trees in the yard. How many trees are there on my street? So I'm going to go ahead and start with the setup equation here, because this could be multiplication, it could be division. If it's division, I don't think it's an array, so I would say that it's either going to be sharing or the equal grouping. If it's multiplication, this doesn't seem to be multiplicative comparison or array or counting, so I would say this is groups of objects if it's multiplication. But to be sure, we can just write the setup equation. So I've got trees, and I've got houses, right? So let's see, there are 7 houses on my street. Each house has 3 trees in the yard. How many trees are there on my street? So we have a lot going on here. We have houses, we have streets, we have trees, we have yards. The yard only shows up in one place here. So I would say, each house has a yard, right? So when it says 3 trees in the yard, that's really 3 trees for that house, right? So I think that makes sense then that my middle number would be that there are 3 trees per, we could use yard. I'm gonna go ahead and use house, right? Again, we're assuming 1 yard per house. So 3 trees per house. That means that the first number has to be the number of houses. And do I know that? Yes, I do. There are 7 houses on my street, right? So in this case, if I were to do 7 houses times 3 trees per house, that would give me the total number of trees. Technically, that's the total number of trees on the street, but all of this is on the street, right? 7 houses on the street, 3 trees per house on the street, total trees on the street. And so then how would I solve this? I would do 7 times 3. So once I realize how I would solve that, that lets me know this is multiplication, which means it is that groups of objects model.